2 weeks after the first meeting with the Galactic Council, Captain Frank Russell sat in his quarters aboard the Defiant, studying reports. Earth had been granted observer status in the Council, but little else. The memory of alien laughter still burned in his mind. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called. Lieutenant Sam Harris stepped in, looking worried. "Captain, we've intercepted some unusual transmissions between Council ships. They're trying to track something called the Vorn. Whatever it is has them scared." The Vorn? Frank had never heard this name during any Council briefings. "Yes, sir. From what we can piece together, they're some kind of hostile species. Council sensors have detected their fleet approaching from the Cygnus arm of the galaxy." Frank stood up. "Get me Admiral Carter immediately." Within minutes, Admiral Lisa Carter's face appeared on Frank's screen. Her expression was serious as she listened to Sam's report. "This is concerning," she said. "The Council hasn't mentioned any threats to us. Ambassador Winters needs to bring this up at today's session." Frank nodded. "And perhaps we should move some of our ships closer to the detection area just in case." "Agreed, but be careful, Frank. We don't want to appear aggressive or paranoid to the Council." Later that day, Ambassador John Winters stood before the Council chambers, asking about the Vorn. The reaction was immediate and dismissive. "Human concerns are noted," Councillor Zixthar said with a wave of his forearms. "The Vorn are a minor species that occasionally raids outer territories. They pose no threat to Council worlds." General Krell added, "Our defenses are more than capable of handling such pests. These matters do not concern observer species." But one Council member, Councillor Miralith from the Proxima system, approached Ambassador Winters privately after the session. "Your species shows wisdom in your concern," she said, her voice soft. "The Vorn have not attacked in many generations, but stories of their savagery remain in our histories. The Council leadership is overconfident. What can you tell us about them?" John asked. "They are hive-minded, relentless. When they last emerged from deep space centuries ago, they nearly overwhelmed 3 Council worlds before being pushed back." Word of this conversation reached Earth Command quickly. Dr. Grace Mitchell, head of weapons research, was brought in to analyze what little data they had on both the Vorn and Council defenses. In her lab on Earth, Grace worked day and night. She called an emergency meeting with Admiral Carter and connected Captain Russell via secure channel. "I've found something interesting," Grace said, displaying complex diagrams on screens around her. "The Council's defensive technology is almost entirely based on energy diffusion and deflection. Their shields are designed to handle directed energy weapons like their own." "Go on," Lisa urged. "They've become so specialized in energy warfare that they've all but abandoned physical defenses. It's like, imagine if humans developed such good bulletproof vests that we forgot how to dodge or block punches." Frank leaned forward. "Are you saying their defenses might have weaknesses against physical attacks?" "Exactly. And based on the limited data about the Vorn, they might exploit exactly this weakness. The Vorn ships have unusual mass readings that suggest they use some form of physical weaponry, alongside energy weapons." Admiral Carter's expression grew concerned. "We need to warn the Council." But when Ambassador Winters tried again to raise concerns, he was openly laughed at. "The primitive species is afraid," one Council member said. "Perhaps they should return to their own system until this threat has passed." Councillor Zixthar was particularly cutting. "Humans still think in terms of rocks and sticks. The Vorn, like all rational species, have evolved to use energy weapons, and our defenses are impenetrable to such attacks." Despite the dismissal, Earth Command ordered its ships to prepare for possible conflict. Captain Russell positioned the Defiant and 2 other Earth vessels near a Council outpost that intelligence suggested might be in the Vorn path. One night, as Frank reviewed tactical plans, his communications officer called an alarm. "Captain, we're picking up massive energy spikes from the Council outpost. They're under attack." Frank rushed to the bridge. On screen, the view screen showed chaos. Strange, insect-like ships were swarming around the Council station. The Council's defensive shields were flickering and failing. "What's happening to their shields?" Sam asked. "They should be holding." Frank watched as the Vorn ships fired what looked like glowing spears that somehow phased through the Council's energy shields. They're using some kind of matter-energy hybrid weapons. The Council wasn't prepared for this. We're receiving distress calls, Olivia reported. The Council ships are being torn apart. Their weapons aren't effective against the Vorn hulls. Frank made his decision instantly. Battle stations. Notify the other Earth ships. We're moving to assist. Captain, Sam cautioned, we have no formal alliance. Council leadership ordered us to stay out of this. There are people dying on that station. Council or not, we help. The Defiant and the other Earth ships moved toward the battle. Frank opened a channel to his fellow captains. This is Captain Russell. Load kinetic penetrator rounds in all railguns. Prepare nuclear-tipped missiles but hold them in reserve. These aliens haven't seen what humans can do yet. As they approached, they witnessed Council ships being methodically destroyed. The Vorn weapons somehow bypassed the advanced shields, and the Council vessels had no secondary defenses. They put all their faith in one technology, Frank muttered. Bad strategy. A Council ship commander appeared on screen, his control room filled with smoke. Human vessels, you must retreat. Your primitive weapons will be useless here. Frank ignored the warning. Target the lead Vorn vessel. Full railgun barrage firing solution Alpha 6. Sam looked at him. Sir, that's our asteroid breaker formation. The Council says their shields won't work against the Vorn weapons. Exactly. And if their shields don't stop those weapons, what makes them think the Vorn have better shields? Fire. The Defiant shuddered as its main railguns launched their payload. Magnetic accelerators pushed specially designed tungsten carbide projectiles to incredible speeds. The bridge crew watched the weapons' trajectories on their screens. The Council commander was still shouting about retreating when the first human projectiles reached their target. No one expected what happened next. Captain Frank Russell stood tall on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship, Defiant. His blue uniform was pressed perfectly, every metal in place. Today was the most important day in human history. Humanity was about to meet the Galactic Council. Status report, Frank said to his crew. Lieutenant Sam Harris looked up from his screen. All systems normal, Captain. We are approaching the meeting coordinates. Admiral Carter is hailing us from Earth Command, said Communications Officer Olivia Martinez. Frank nodded. Put her through. Admiral Lisa Carter's face appeared on the main screen. Her expression was serious. Captain Russell, this first impression is critical. The Galactic Council represents 27 advanced species. They've been watching us for decades. Now they've decided we're ready for contact. We won't let Earth down, Admiral, Frank promised. Remember, this is a peaceful mission, but show strength. Council protocol requires new species to demonstrate defensive capabilities. Admiral Carter's voice was firm. Good luck, Defiant. Earth. Command out. The screen went dark. Frank turned to his crew. Well, you heard the Admiral. Let's make history. The Defiant moved slowly through space. Suddenly, a massive ship appeared. It was at least 10 times larger than any human vessel. Its surface shimmered with strange lights and materials unknown to Earth science. My God, whispered Sam. More alien ships appeared. They formed a circle around the Defiant. Their designs were all different, showing the diverse species of the Council. We're receiving a transmission, Olivia said. They're inviting us to dock with the main Council ship. Frank nodded. Take us in, steady approach. The Defiant docked with the massive alien vessel. Frank led a small team, including Sam Harris and Dr. Grace Mitchell, to meet the aliens. They walked through a strange corridor that seemed to be made of living metal. They entered a huge round room. Beings of all shapes and sizes sat in a circle. Some looked almost human. Others were completely alien. Floating clouds of gas, crystalline structures, and things Frank couldn't even describe. A tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms stood. Welcome, humans. I am Grand Counselor Uxmar. For millennia, the Galactic Council has guided developing species toward peaceful cooperation. Earth has finally reached the threshold where contact is permitted. Ambassador John Winters stepped forward. On behalf of Earth, We thank you for this historic opportunity. Another alien rose. This one had scales and yellow eyes with vertical pupils. I am Counselor Zixthar of the Arcturian Dominion. Before we discuss membership, we must evaluate your species. All potential members must demonstrate their technological level, particularly defensive capabilities. Admiral Carter, who had arrived on a separate ship, stepped forward. We are prepared for this evaluation. The council chamber changed. The walls became screens showing Earth's military technology. Dr. Mitchell began explaining human weapons systems, nuclear arsenals, railguns, laser defenses, and orbital platforms. As the presentation continued, Frank noticed strange sounds from the council members. Some were making clicking noises. Others were vibrating or emitting soft lights. The universal translators soon made it clear. They were laughing. Counselor Zixthar spoke, barely containing his amusement. You propel metal with magnets? You split atoms? How quaint. These are children's toys compared to council technology. Our railguns can accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed, Dr. Mitchell said firmly. A purple, tentacled alien waved dismissively. We moved beyond kinetic weapons 10,000 years ago. Energy manipulation is the only civilized approach to defense. Not to mention, added another council member, your weapons would be useless against our shield technology. To demonstrate, Zixthar activated a small device. A bubble of energy surrounded him. Even your nuclear weapons would be absorbed by our basic personal shields. Military-grade protections are exponentially stronger. Frank felt his face grow, hot with embarrassment. Earth's best technology was being treated like stone axes and spears. Admiral Carter maintained her composure. Different evolutionary paths lead to different technological approaches. We believe diversity of methods has value. Of course it does, Zixthar said in a tone that suggested the opposite. The Council values unique perspectives. More laughter rippled through the chamber. General Krell, a massive being with rock-like skin, stomped forward. As military advisor to the Council, his opinion carried weight. Your species focuses too much on physical impact. True advanced warfare is about energy manipulation, quantum disruption, and dimensional phasing. Your weapons wouldn't even register on our threat assessments. The meeting continued for hours. Earth representatives tried to discuss other aspects of human civilization, art, philosophy, science, but the Council kept returning to their amusement over human weapons. When the delegation finally returned to the Defiant, morale was low. That could have gone better, Sam said quietly. Frank gathered his officers in the conference room. They may be advanced, but they're also arrogant. That's a weakness. Admiral Carter nodded. I noticed something interesting. For all their talk of energy weapons, their ships have minimal point defense systems. They've optimized against threats they understand and ignored others. Dr. Mitchell tapped her tablet. Their shields are impressive, but they're designed to disperse energy. I wonder how they'd handle concentrated physical impact. Let's hope. We never need to find out, Ambassador Winter said. Our goal is peaceful integration with the galactic community. Frank was about to respond when an alert sounded. Olivia's voice came over the comm. Captain Admiral, we're picking up a transmission from the Council. They're tracking an unknown fleet entering their space. They're calling it a Level 1 threat. Frank and Lisa exchanged glances. Level 1, the highest possible danger. Looks like the Council has enemies too, Frank said quietly. And maybe, just maybe, they've forgotten something important about warfare that humans remember very well. What's that? Asked Sam. Frank's expression was grim. Never bring just one type of weapon to a fight. The bridge of the Defiant fell silent as everyone watched their screens. The railgun projectiles streaked toward the lead Vorn ship, a massive, chitinous vessel that resembled a giant insect. No one spoke. No one breathed. The first projectile hit the Vorn ship. Instead of bouncing off or being absorbed by shields, it tore straight through the alien hull, leaving a gaping hole. The other projectiles followed, punching through the vessel like it was made of paper. Direct hits, shouted Commander Eric Daniels from the weapons station. Multiple penetrations. The Vorn ship listed to one side, leaking a strange, glowing fluid into space. Secondary explosions rippled across its surface before it split apart completely. On the view screen, the Council commander's mouth hung open in shock. "Impossible," he whispered. Captain Frank Russell allowed himself a small smile. "Target the next largest vessel, fire when ready." The Defiant fired again. More Vorn ships were hit. The two other Earth vessels joined the attack, their railguns tearing through the alien fleet. The Vorn ships began to break formation, clearly surprised by the effective counterattack. "They're regrouping," Sam reported, changing formation to defensive posture. A new transmission came through. The face that appeared on screen wasn't human or Council. It was something insectoid with compound eyes and mandibles that clicked as it spoke. "Unknown vessels," the translation came through. "You use primitive kinetic weapons. Unexpected. Interesting. You will be consumed next." Frank cut the transmission. "Looks like we got their attention." High Admiral Vorkath of the Council Defense Fleet appeared on another channel. His usually composed features showed clear shock. "Captain Russell, your weapons, they are effective against the Vorn. How is this possible?" "Simple physics, Admiral," Frank replied while monitoring the ongoing battle. "Your civilization abandoned physical projectiles for energy weapons long ago. The Vorn seem to have developed defenses specifically against energy attacks. But they weren't prepared for good old-fashioned tungsten moving at high velocity. More Council ships arrived, but they hung back, watching as the three human vessels continued their assault on the Vorn fleet. Chief Engineer Olivia Martinez called up from engineering. "Captain, I've analyzed the Vorn ship debris. Their hulls are designed to disperse energy weapons, but they're structurally vulnerable to kinetic impacts. Our railguns are hitting them at their weakest point." The battle continued for hours. The Vorn fleet, much larger than initially thought, kept coming in waves. The Earth ships began to take damage as the Vorn adjusted their tactics. "Hull breach on Deck 4, reported Sam. "Emergency teams responding." Frank gripped the arms of his command chair. "Status of our ammunition?" "Railgun ammunition at 42%, Commander Daniels reported. "We can't keep this up forever, sir." Frank made a quick decision. "Send a message to the Council ships. Tell them we need their help. If they target the same ships we do, their energy weapons might penetrate through the holes our kinetic weapons create." The message was sent. For a tense minute, there was no response. Then, High Admiral Vorkath's voice came through. "We will follow your tactical lead, Captain Russell. This is unprecedented." The Council ships moved into formation alongside the Earth vessels. Frank had Commander Daniels coordinate their attacks. Human railguns would punch holes in the Vorn shields and hulls. Then Council ships would focus their energy weapons on those same spots, causing catastrophic damage. The combination was devastating. Vorn ships began to fall back. After another hour of fighting, the remaining Vorn vessels jumped into some kind of faster-than-light travel and disappeared. The battle was over. The Defiant and the other Earth ships had taken damage, but they were still operational. Many Council vessels hadn't been so lucky. As emergency teams worked to repair the Defiant, Frank received a request for his presence aboard the Council command ship. Admiral Lisa Carter, who had arrived with reinforcements just as the battle ended, joined him. They were escorted to a large meeting room where several Council members waited, including Councilor Zixthar and General Krell. Their previous mockery was gone, replaced by subdued respect. High Admiral Vorkath spoke first. "Captain Russell, Admiral Carter, the Council owes you and your species a debt. Without your intervention, we would have lost the outpost and all personnel aboard." Councilor Zixthar stepped forward. His usual arrogance was noticeably absent. "We misjudged your technology, humans. What we perceived as primitive proved to be precisely what was needed against the Vorn." General Krell nodded, his stone-like face unreadable. "The Vorn have adapted to our warfare methods over centuries. They developed specific counters to energy weapons and our shield technology. But they had no defense against your kinetic weapons, because they, like us, abandoned such primitive technology long ago. Admiral Carter spoke carefully. Perhaps this demonstrates the value of diverse approaches to technology. Different evolutionary paths lead to different blind spots. Indeed, agreed Counselor Miralith, who had warned them earlier. The Council has much to learn from Earth. A holographic display activated in the center of the room, showing images of the battle. Frank watched as the footage clearly showed Earth's railgun projectiles tearing through Vorn vessels. The Vorn will return, High Admiral Vorkath said gravely. They never launched just one attack. This was merely their first wave testing our defenses. Now they know about your weapons, they will adapt. Then we'll need to work together, Frank suggested. Combine our technologies, your energy weapons with our kinetic ones. Give them something they can't easily counter. General Krell, who had been silent, suddenly laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. Do you know, Captain Russell, that the last time the Council used kinetic weapons was over 15,000 years ago? We have much to relearn. Frank nodded. And we have much to learn from you as well. The meeting continued for hours as both sides shared information about the Vorn and began planning combined defenses. When Frank and Lisa finally returned to the Defiant, they found the crew already working with Council engineers to repair the damage. In his quarters later, Frank recorded a message to Earth Command. The situation has changed dramatically, he reported. Our primitive weapons just saved a Council outpost from destruction. They're taking us seriously now. But this is just the beginning of a larger conflict. The Vorn will be back, and next time they'll be ready for us too. He paused, considering his next words carefully. I recommend we immediately share our railgun and kinetic weapon designs with the Council. In return, we should request access to their energy weapon and shield technology. Together, we might create defenses the Vorn can't overcome. As he finished his report, Frank looked out his viewport at the stars. Humanity had just proven its worth to the galaxy in the most unexpected way. Their primitive weapons had succeeded where advanced technology had failed. But the real test was still to come. The Vorn would return, and next time they would be ready for humanity's weapons. The question was, would humanity and the Council be ready for them? 1 month after the first battle with the Vorn, Earth had become the center of unexpected galactic attention. The Council, once dismissive of human technology, now sent their best engineers and scientists to learn about kinetic weapons. Captain Frank Russell walked through the halls of the Defiant, which was docked at the main Council station. Council engineers crawled over every inch of the ship, studying its railguns with an almost religious reverence. It's strange to see them so interested in what they called toys, Lieutenant Sam Harris said as he walked alongside Frank. Pride comes before a fall, Frank replied. At least they're willing to learn now. They entered a large conference room where Admiral Lisa Carter was meeting with Council military leaders. Holographic displays showed Vorn ship movements across Council space. They've attacked 3 more outposts, High Admiral Vorkath was saying. Each time they adapted more to our combined tactics. Lisa noticed Frank and waved him over. Captain Russell, perfect timing. We were just discussing the new defense plans. On Earth, President Diane Foster addressed the United Nations about the alien threat. Screens around the world showed her calm but determined face. Humanity stands at a crossroads, she said. We have been thrust into a galactic conflict, not of our making, but we will not shrink from this challenge. The Vorn threaten all sentient life. Earth will do its part to protect our new allies. Within days, Earth's factories were running at full capacity, producing railguns and kinetic weapons for Council ships. In return, Council engineers helped install shield generators and energy weapons on human vessels. At the Council's main military academy, Lieutenant Commander Paul Garcia found himself teaching alien officers about human battle tactics. The Vorn fight as a hive mind, Paul explained to his diverse class. They expect enemies to follow predictable patterns. This is where human guerrilla tactics can be effective. A squid-like alien raised a tentacle. But irregular tactics lack precision. The Council has always valued order in battle. Paul smiled. Sometimes chaos is exactly what you need. The Vorn can't predict what they don't understand. Meanwhile, in a massive laboratory on the Council homeworld, Science Director Nyla Jones worked with alien scientists to develop new weapons. The key is combining approaches, she told her team as they examined a new prototype. We're taking human railgun technology and powering it with council energy sources. The result is a hybrid weapon the Vorn won't expect. One of the alien scientists, a being made of what looked like living crystal, spoke up. We have been blind to other approaches for too long. Our technological path became so focused that we lost sight of alternatives. Nyla nodded. That's the danger of any civilization, believing they've found the right way to do things. Evolution thrives on diversity, not uniformity. Not everyone embraced this new cooperation. Counselor Zixthar, though no longer openly mocking humans, was assigned to work directly with them, a position he clearly found uncomfortable. Your species is still new to galactic society, he told Frank during one tense meeting. You cannot possibly understand the complex politics involved. Frank met his gaze steadily. Maybe that's our advantage. We're not bound by thousands of years of tradition. We can think differently. The Vorn didn't give them much time to prepare. Their next attack came against a major council hub world. This time they arrived with ships specifically armored against railguns. The battle was fierce. Human and council ships fought side by side, but the Vorn had adapted. Their new armor deflected many kinetic projectiles, while their weapons seemed designed to target human vessels first. They've identified us as the primary threat, Frank told his crew as the Defiant rocked from another hit. Take that as a compliment. Lieutenant Commander Paul Garcia, temporarily assigned to the Defiant, suggested a new approach. Captain, the Vorn are expecting us to use our railguns the same way we did before. What if we change tactics? Frank nodded. What do you have in mind? They've armored their fronts against kinetic impacts, but their rear sections are still vulnerable. If some ships could distract them while others attack from behind, Frank immediately contacted Admiral Carter and High Admiral Vorkath. They quickly formed a new battle plan. Council ships would engage the Vorn head-on using energy weapons, while human vessels would execute a dangerous maneuver to get behind the Vorn fleet. The plan worked. As the Vorn focused on the Council ships, Earth vessels swung around and hit them from behind with railguns and the new hybrid weapons developed by Nyla Jones. The Vorn, caught by surprise, lost several ships before retreating. But the victory came at a cost. 3 human ships were destroyed and many Council vessels were badly damaged. The Defiant limped back to base with severe damage to its engines and weapon systems. In the aftermath, Frank found himself in a Council hospital, visiting injured crew members. To his surprise, Counselor Zixthar was there too, speaking with wounded Council soldiers. The counselor noticed Frank and approached him. Captain Russell, I wish to see how your crew is faring. Frank raised an eyebrow. That's unexpectedly considerate, Counselor. Zixthar seemed uncomfortable. I have been reevaluating many of my assumptions. Your people fight with remarkable courage. The Council has much to learn from humans, it seems. We all have things to learn from each other, Frank replied. As they walked through the hospital together, Zixthar continued. You should know that the Council is voting tomorrow on Earth's membership status. After recent events, there is strong support for granting you full membership rather than observer status. Frank stopped walking. That's good news. But I'm curious. How will you vote, Counselor? Zixthar was silent for a moment. I have served on the Council for over 200 years, Captain. In that time, I have seen many species come and go. Few have made such an impact in so short a time as humans. He paused again. I will vote in favor of your membership. Back on the Defiant, now undergoing repairs, Frank shared the news with his officers. Chief Engineer Olivia Martinez laughed. From mockery to membership in 1 month? That must be some kind of record. Frank nodded. The Vorn did what no amount of diplomacy could. They gave us common ground with the Council. Science Director Nyla Jones joined them, bringing blueprints for new weapon systems. The next generation of hybrid weapons will be ready soon. We're combining Council phase technology with human multiple warhead delivery systems. Will it be enough? Sam asked. The Vorn keep adapting. So do we, Nyla replied. That's humanity's greatest strength. We've never stopped adapting. Later that night, Frank received an urgent message. The Vorn had sent a transmission directly to Council headquarters. It was brief but chilling. We have studied your new allies. We have adapted to their weapons. The next attack will end this war. Prepare to be consumed. Intelligence reports indicated the Vorn were massing for a major assault. Their fleet had grown, now numbering in the hundreds. They would strike within days. Frank called an emergency meeting with Admiral Carter, High Admiral Vorkath, and the other military leaders. As they discussed options, Lieutenant Commander Paul Garcia made a suggestion that silenced the room. What if we stop trying to match their adaptations and instead do something they could never expect? Something so unconventional that it goes against all modern military doctrine. What exactly are you proposing? Asked General Krell. Paul looked around the room. The ancient human tactic of boarding enemy vessels. Physical combat, inside their ships. The council members stared in disbelief. High Admiral Vorkath found his voice first. You wish to enter Vorn ships? Physically fight them? This has not been done in galactic warfare for millennia. Exactly, Paul said. They won't expect it. The Vorn adapt to weapons and tactics they can observe. They can't prepare for something they've never seen. Frank considered the idea. It's extremely high risk, but at this point, we need every advantage we can get. Admiral Carter nodded slowly. Prepare a detailed plan, Commander. Garcia. We'll present it to the full council tomorrow. As the meeting broke up, Frank looked out a viewport at the stars. The final confrontation with the Vorn was coming. Everything would depend on whether the combined forces of humans and the council could surprise them one more time, and whether the Vorn's greatest weakness, their inability to comprehend truly primitive approaches, would be their undoing. The final battle against the Vorn began at dawn, if dawn could exist in the emptiness of space. The combined human council fleet gathered at the edge of the Proxima system. Over 200 ships formed a defensive line against the approaching Vorn armada. Captain Frank Russell stood on the bridge of the Defiant, which now bore the scars of previous battles. The ship had been quickly repaired and upgraded with new hybrid weapons. All stations report ready, Lieutenant Sam Harris announced. Frank nodded. Open a channel to Admiral Carter. Admiral Lisa Carter appeared on screen from her command ship. Captain Russell, is your team prepared for the boarding operation? Yes, Admiral. Lieutenant Commander Garcia has trained them well. Frank looked at Paul Garcia, who stood nearby in combat armor. Though I still think this plan is crazy, Alite smiled grimly. The best plans usually are, sir. The Vorn fleet appeared on long-range sensors. It was massive. Over 300 ships of various sizes led by an enormous mothership that dwarfed anything in the human council fleet. High Admiral Vorkath's face joined the communication. All ships, prepare for battle. Remember the plan? Standard engagement protocols until the boarding teams are in position. May your ancestors guide your hands. The two fleets closed rapidly. As they came within weapons range, the Vorn fired first. Strange energy weapons that twisted and phased through normal space. Several council ships took direct hits, their shields barely holding. Return fire, Frank ordered. All batteries. The Defiant fired its upgraded railguns. The projectiles now glowed with council energy technology, allowing them to partially phase through Vorn armor before solidifying on impact. Several Vorn ships were hit, but their improved armor absorbed much of the damage. The battle expanded across a vast area of space. Ships maneuvered and fired, creating a deadly light show against the backdrop of stars. But this was just the first phase of the plan. Frank gave the signal. Boarding teams to your shuttles. Launch when ready. Throughout the human fleet, small, heavily armored shuttles launched. They were painted black with minimal energy signatures, as primitive as possible to avoid Vorn detection systems. Each carried a team of human soldiers and council specialists. Good hunting, Frank said as Commander Garcia's shuttle launched from the Defiant. The small shuttles weaved through the chaos of battle, heading for the massive Vorn mothership. The Vorn, focused on the main fleet action, didn't notice the tiny craft approaching, the shuttles attached to the hull of the mothership like remoras on a shark. Special cutting tools, designed by Nyla Jones, made quick work of the Vorn hull. Material. The boarding teams entered the enemy vessel. Back on the Defiant, Frank monitored the operation while continuing to direct the main battle. Status of Garcia's team? They've breached the mothership, sir, Olivia reported. Minimal resistance so far. The Vorn didn't expect anyone to actually enter their ships. Meanwhile, inside the Vorn mothership, Paul Garcia led his team through alien corridors. The interior was organic-looking, with walls that seemed almost alive. They encountered Vorn drones, worker-like creatures that seemed confused by the physical intrusion. Remember, aim for the neural clusters, Paul told his team as they fought. They're way deeper. Council intelligence says that's their weakness. The combined Human Council boarding team moved efficiently through the ship. Council specialists used their knowledge of alien technology to navigate, while human soldiers provided the fighting power, using simple projectile weapons that the Vorn had no defense against inside their own ship. Outside, the main battle continued, to rage. The Vorn fleet fought with terrible efficiency, their ships moving in perfect coordination like a single organism. Several human and council vessels had already been destroyed. We're taking heavy damage on our port side, Sam reported as the Defiant shook from another hit. Rotate shield frequencies, Frank ordered. Don't give them a stable target. He checked the timer on his display. Garcia's team needs more time. Inside the Vorn mothership, Paul and his team fought their way toward what they believed was the central command node. The resistance grew stronger the deeper they went. They know. We're here now, Paul said as his team took cover from Vorn defenders. These weren't mindless drones, but warrior-class Vorn with powerful natural armor and built-in weapons. A council technician, a blue-skinned being named Krivosh, worked feverishly on a device while the humans provided covering fire. Almost ready? Commander, he said. This disruptor should confuse their hive mind communication. Paul nodded. Everyone get ready to move on my signal. When the disruptor activated, the effect was immediate. The Vorn defenders began moving erratically, some even attacking each other. Paul led the charge forward, pushing deeper into the mothership. Back. In the main battle, Frank received an update. Garcia's team has reached the central chamber, sir. They're placing the charges now. Frank immediately opened a channel to all ships. All vessels prepare to execute Maneuver Omega on my mark. Boarding teams, you have 5 minutes to extract. High Admiral Vorkath acknowledged the order. The entire fleet began to reposition, creating a pathway for the boarding teams to escape, while maintaining pressure on the Vorn fleet. In the heart of the mothership, Paul Garcia looked up at the massive structure before him. It pulsed with alien energy, the central node of the Vorn hive mind connection. Charges set, reported one of his team. Timer active. Everyone out, Paul ordered. Move fast. We have 4 minutes before this whole ship becomes very unhappy. As the boarding teams raced back through the corridors, now fighting retreating actions against confused but still dangerous Vorn warriors, the main fleet executed a complex maneuver. Council ships used their energy weapons to create a corridor of destruction through the Vorn fleet, while human vessels launched salvos of conventional missiles to provide cover. Frank watched tensely as the timers counted down. Status on extraction? Boarding teams are reaching their shuttles now, Olivia reported. Some are already launching. 2 minutes to detonation, Sam added. Frank opened a direct channel to Paul. Commander, what's your status? Paul's voice came through, punctuated by weapons fire. Almost at our shuttle, sir. Had to take a detour. We'll make it. The last of the boarding team shuttles launched from the Vorn mothership with less than a minute to spare. As they raced back toward the Human Council fleet, the charges inside the mothership detonated. The explosion wasn't particularly large by space battle standards. It wasn't meant to destroy the ship. That would have required far more explosives than the teams could carry. Instead, it was precisely targeted to disrupt the Vorn hive mind connection. The effect rippled through the entire Vorn fleet. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly began drifting aimlessly or flying in random patterns. Some even collided with each other. "It worked," Sam exclaimed. "The Vorn fleet is in disarray." Frank didn't waste the opportunity. "All ships concentrate fire on the mothership. Target the damaged section." The combined fleet unleashed everything they had: human railguns, council energy weapons, and the new hybrid technologies, all focused on the wounded Vorn mothership. Without its coordinating influence, the rest of the Vorn fleet couldn't respond effectively. The mothership's outer hull began to crack under the assault. Secondary explosions followed, as systems failed catastrophically. Finally, with a silent flash visible across the battlefield, the massive vessel broke apart. What remained of the Vorn fleet began to retreat, jumping away into whatever faster-than-light method they used. The battle was over. They had won. 3 days later, Captain Frank Russell stood in the Great Council chamber. The room was packed with representatives from all 27 council species. Admiral Lisa Carter and President Diane Foster stood beside him, along with Lieutenant Commander Paul Garcia, Science Director Nyla Jones, and other heroes of the battle. Grand Counselor Uxmar addressed the assembly. "For too long, the Council has believed that our path of technological development was the only valid one. We dismissed different approaches as primitive or obsolete." The ancient alien looked directly at the human delegation. "We were wrong. And that error nearly cost us everything." Counselor Zixthar stepped forward. "I move that Earth be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges thereof. Their contribution to our survival cannot be measured." The vote was unanimous. As President Foster accepted the formal invitation, Frank looked around the chamber. Just months ago, these same beings had laughed at human weapons and technology. Now they studied Earth's primitive approaches with new respect. General Krell approached Frank after the ceremony. "Captain Russell, the Council Military Academy is establishing a new training program. We would be honored if Earth would provide instructors in what you call combined arms tactics and asymmetric warfare." Frank smiled. "I'm sure we can arrange that, General." Later, aboard the Defiant, Frank found Paul Garcia in the observation lounge looking out at the stars. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Frank said as he joined him. Paul nodded. "I never imagined we'd find ourselves here, teaching the most advanced species in the galaxy how to fight."